In this Godot tutorial, I've made targetable areas for the player abilities, using raycasting and Area2D. As you can see, I have a single target, ranged AoE, and cone attacks. This is intended for a top-down 2D single-player turn-based game, and you'll probably have to optimize for other applications. To start, I have a basic tile map on collision layer 2, and I've made the wall tiles solid. The player and enemies are kinematic bodies on collision layer 1, but masked to 1 and 2 so they can collide with each other and the walls. Then I have an H-box container for the spell buttons and the FPS counter. You can increase the space between elements by changing the separation constant. Then, in the script, I set the player speed to 350 pixels per second and make a dictionary to map the movement keys to the appropriate vectors. These are set in the project settings. I make a current spell, which is null by default, and a dictionary to keep track of the spell buttons on the bar. On ready, I connect each button's pressed signal to the select spell function and pass the button as a parameter. Here I enable the previous spell, then disable the new button and set it as the current spell. In process, I use the engine.getFramesPerSecond to update the FPS counter. Then, if the UI cancel action was pressed, which is mapped to the escape key by default, I call cancel spell. This re-enables the previous spell button and sets the current spell to null. In the physics process, I set the velocity to 0 and loop through the movement keys. For each key that's pressed, add the vector to the velocity, which allows for strafing. If the velocity is not 0, I normalize the velocity and multiply it by player speed, then use move and slide to move the player body. So currently, the player can move around and collide with the walls and enemies. You can also toggle between spells and press escape to cancel completely. So now I'll add a polygon 2D between the tile map and enemy nodes and rename it target area. I'll set the color to blue and make it semi-transparent. And you could add the points directly through the editor, but I want to draw them programmatically instead. Then in the script, I add a new function to set the target area, which takes a vector2 pool of points and assigns the target area polygon. I also add a function to clear the target area, which sets the target area to an empty vector2 pool. Next, I'll add a function to draw the target area. First, I'll check if the current spell is null. Then I'll clear the target area. Otherwise, I'll get the player position and make a new vector pool of points. And I'll append 4 points to make a diamond around the player. So I'll add 100 to the X position, and then 100 to the Y position, and then I'll subtract 100 from both. And finally, set the target area to the points. Now I'll call draw target area. From the cancel spell, select spell, and after the player moves in physics process. So now when I select a spell, it draws the diamond, and I can move around to have it follow, and press escape to clear the area. Now I'll add a variable for the field of view increment equal to 2 times pi over 60, so there's 60 points in the circle. And I'll add a function to get the field of view circle, which takes the from point and a radius. I'll set the angle equal to the FOV increment, since it causes problems if you start at 0. And I'll make a new points array. Then, while angle is less than 2 times pi, I'll get the offset, which equals a new vector2 with the x set to radius and the y set to 0, rotated by the current angle, and the 2 point, which equals from plus the offset. And I'll append the 2 point to the points array and add the increment to the current angle. Then return the points array. And now in draw target area, I'll check if the current spell equals single target. Then I'll set the target area to the FOV circle from the player position with a radius of 300. Otherwise, clear the target area. So now when you select single target, it draws a circle around the player as it moves. And if you change the spell or hit escape, the circle is cleared. So now I need to do some raycasting to get the proper shape. So I'll add a new onReady variable for space state equal to getWorld2D.direct space state, and in get FOV circle, set result equal to space state dot intersect ray from and to without any exclusions on collision layer 2. And if you want this to collide with the enemies as well, it would be collision layer 3. Then if result, append the result position to the points list. Otherwise, append the 2 point. So now the field of vision is blocked by the solid walls. Now I want to be able to click inside the targetable area. I could use the geometry functions, but I think it's easier to just add an Area2D and a collision polygon as a child. So I'll move the polygon 2D and rename the area to target area, and make sure that the pickable flag under input is enabled so I can actually click on it. I'll move it back above the enemy and connect to the input event signal, and I'll call the target area input function on the main script. So it'll generate that function for you with all the parameters. So I'll go ahead and set the event type to input event to make the auto completion work. Then if event is action pressed click, which I have mapped to the left mouse in the project settings, and if the current spell is single target, then get the result of the space state dot intersect point at the global mouse position, and loop through the results if r.collider is not player, since we don't want to delete the player, then r.collider.queueFree. And regardless, call cancel spell to reset the spell bar. And I'll change the set target area to point to the polygon 2D and the collision polygon. So now when you click on an enemy inside the area, it deletes it. And if you click on the player or on nothing, it just disappears. And if you click outside the area, it doesn't register at all. So I'll change the area to red to indicate that. So I'll set the polygon 2D to red by default, then connect to the target area's mouse entered signal in the main script, and I'll set the target area color to a semi-transparent blue, and also connect to the mouse exited signal, and here I'll change the polygon to red. So now when you use the spell, it starts out as red. You move the mouse into the area and you can use the spell, and when the mouse exits, it turns red again. Then in draw target area, if the current spell is ranged AoE, then I'll set the target area to an FOV circle of size 200 from the player position. So now you can see the radius is much smaller, and when you click, it disappears, but nothing happens. So now I want to draw a second circle around the mouse so you can target an area to deal damage. So I'll change the target area to a node 2D with the primary and secondary area as children. Move it back above the enemy, and then I'll add a collision polygon and polygon 2D, and I'll change this to a magenta. And in the script, I change set target area to set primary target area, and change the paths as well. And I'll duplicate this function to set the secondary target area. And then I'll add both to the clear target area function. Then I'll change the calls from set target area to set primary target area, and change the path on mouse entered and exit to primary/polygon. And I'll double check to make sure everything still works. I also want to break the clear target area into two separate functions. Just to make it a little bit more readable. So I'll define both of these and copy the corresponding code. Then in the draw target area function, I'll set the secondary target area to get FOV circle from the global mouse position with a radius of 100. And if it's single target, I'll clear the secondary target area. Now in the area input, if the event is a mouse movement event, then call the draw target area function, and on target area mouse exited, I will clear the secondary target area as well. So now, if I choose the ranged AoE, you can see that it gets blocked by the walls like the main one, and when you click, it disappears. It does draw a purple circle on the GUI when you select ranged AoE, so to fix that, I'll call clear secondary target after the draw target area in select spell. So So now it doesn't appear. Now in the target area input, I'll make a variable for targets, and I'll append the result collider to the targets list, and then for t in targets, if t does not equal the player, t.queueFree. So now to deal damage in the ranged AoE, we'll check if the current spell equals ranged AoE. Then set targets equal to target area secondary dot get overlapping bodies. So now if we select ranged AoE and click, all the enemies within the circle are deleted. Now I'll move the FOV code to the raycast arc function and add the start angle and end angle parameters. I'll set angle to start angle and loop through while angle is less than end angle. And in get FOV circle, I'll return raycast arc from radius FOV increment for the start and 2 times pi for the end. So I'll make sure everything still works, and it looks like it does. So now I need to make the cone. So I'll add a get FOV cone function. This will take a from point and radius parameter as well as a width and angle. So I'll set the start angle equal to angle minus width over 2, and the end angle is equal to angle plus width over 2. Then I'll return raycast arc from radius start angle to end angle. Now I don't want it to round this calculation down, so I'll cast width as a float. Then in the draw target area, if the current spell equals the cone, I'll get the mouse angle from the player position. So get global mouse position dot angle to point. To player global position. And I'll set the primary target to get FOV cone. The from point is the player global position. with a radius of 250, a width of 1, which is approximately 1/6 of the circle, and the angle is the mouse angle that we found here. Now if I run it, you can see the arc is drawn, but it doesn't connect back to the player. So in the getFOV cone, I'll make a points variable equal to the raycast arc and append the from point at the end and return points. So now it's a proper cone connecting to the player, which gets blocked by the walls. Now to make the cone deal damage, in the target area input, if current spell equals the cone, targets equal target area primary dot get overlapping bodies. And now it deletes the enemies. Now it's working pretty well, but redrawing both target areas every time is redundant, so I'll add a state variable for optimization. At the top, I'll make a new enumerator for the draw target state, and I'll define the player moved, mouse moved, spell selected, and spell cancelled states. Then every place I call draw target area, I'll need to pass in a state. So here, if the player moves, I'll call draw target area. And this will be spell selected. And spell cancelled in the next one. And on the target area input will be mouse moved. Now in the draw target area, I'll make a new shorthand variable for the draw target state, and I'll check if state equals spell selected and clear the secondary target area if it is. And then in select spell, I can remove the clear secondary target after draw. Then in the draw target function, if current spell is single target and if the state equals spell selected or the state equals player moved, then set the primary target area. If the spell is ranged AoE, we'll check if the spell is selected or player moved, set primary target. Otherwise, if state equals mouse moved, then update the second target area. And if the spell is a swivel cone, if state is spell selected or player moved or mouse moved, then update the primary target area. Now the target drawing is more efficient. You could expand on this to add an AoE blast around the player, a ranged targetable cone, or make a crescent shape. But that's all for this tutorial, so thank you for watching and have a great day.